I don't know that I need the mic because I talk loudly, but I'll use it anyway. First of all, thank you guys all for coming. That is exactly what I said to Lance. He's like, when do you want to go? And I was like, it doesn't matter. We have a great membership, and I want to talk about why we created NYVC Sports very quickly and then get out of the way because these guys have far more amazing things to say than anything I'm going to say. But real briefly, we created NYVC Sports in 2011 when there was almost no entrepreneurialism and almost no investment in sports. The biggest exit at the time was GSI, an e-commerce company. And what was going on in the industry, I'd gone from the entrepreneurial world, from a league to the entrepreneurial world, to consulting, to a league, and felt like I was going to lose my entrepreneurial and investor network. And I met Deepan, and Deepan was working in the investing world and starting his own company. And everyone from these three different groups were trying to figure out what each other was up to. And nobody was really talking the way we felt like they should be. And so very altruistically, we thought, wouldn't it be great if every investor and every entrepreneur that touches the sports world and every person in the sports industry, publishers, broadcasters, leagues, teams, agencies, brands, et cetera, all got together. And then we thought, well, selfishly, wouldn't it be great if we sat in the middle of all of that and we used that to build our networks? And here we are 8 years later with our 37th annual NYVC at Advertising Week. It's been 6 years. And that was the goal. We've since launched, see if this works, San Francisco and Boston. So if you're in those communities and you want to get involved, we'd love to have you. We do events. They were monthly, and now Deepan and I both have kids, so they're now more like quarterly. But we'd love to get you involved. This is a community built. All of our events are free. They're usually on a Monday or Tuesday or Wednesday night, not to interfere with social lives. Come for an hour, have a drink, meet some new people. It's self-selecting. It's all about networking, and come listen to an intelligent panel. Real quick, I want to thank, there are a lot of people that helped make this go. I appreciate the full room of what were friendly faces when the lights weren't right in my eyes and I can't see anything, but truly thank you for coming. Deepan's here, and Blake is going to serve the role of both board member and panelist today, so he'll be the I'm from Boston, so I guess I'll go Bill Russell, player coach. And so many others, Tom and Joe and Jeremy, I think, is here as well, and others. So thank you for all of your support of NYVC. A lot of more stuff to follow. Tweet away. We certainly want to get the word out, and we want to connect these three communities. So without further ado, I want to introduce Gillian Kemmerer, who is our moderator and an esteemed journalist and with Sport Express, and is going to introduce the panelists and take it away. So we're going to have some fun. We're doing 2 panels. We'll have a little short video brought to you by our sponsor, Topgolf, who's helped put this together and help fund some of the fun things that we do. And we'll go from there. So thanks, everyone.
Thank you so much, Jeff, and everyone, thank you for getting here. You arrived here during UNGA, so you're already winning today. Thank you so much for coming. I am so thrilled to be sitting on the stage with 5 gentlemen who represent some of the most innovative properties in sports. They are generating revenue and acquiring new eyes in some really creative ways, and I'm excited for them to share it with you. Please submit your questions so you don't leave me hanging up here. We're definitely going to leave some time at the end of the panel for that. And I believe the hashtag is AW New York, is that right? So if you'd like to go ahead and get involved in the conversation, we'll definitely be keeping an eye out after the panel. So let me go ahead and introduce our panelists because we are long on panelists and short on time. So to my immediate right, your left, is Dustin Godsey. He's the Chief Marketing Officer of the Milwaukee Bucks. Next to Dustin is Blake Stuchin, Vice President of Digital Media Business Development at the NFL, and our Bill Russell apparently as well. Next to Blake is John Brody, Executive Vice President of Global Sales and Head of International at WWE. Then we have Jamie King in the hat, Head of eSports at Engine Shop. And then finally, John Kozack, Senior Vice President of Multimedia Sales at Univision Communications. So gentlemen, thanks for joining us here today. John, because you are all the way at the end, I'm actually going to kick it off with you. I think it makes sense to start this conversation maybe looking back before we look ahead. So if we were to take a look at your overall revenue as a pie chart from the foundation of your organization, or if you want to talk about your industry as a whole, that's fine too, until now, how would the slices of the pie have changed in size, and what are some of the new entrants?
Well, when I first started at Univision, we were literally a broadcast television network, owned some stations, and we had terrestrial radio. We are a very big multimedia company now, and we've changed a lot. Since I've been there, we've grown a lot, and we launched a 24/7 sports cable network, 2DNA. I mean, it competes with FS1, ESPN on a daily basis. Our suite of digital properties, from very simply live streaming to our OTT direct-to-consumer app that we have, podcasting, a social media network of 150 influencers that we have that are vetted through us and exclusive to us. So we're a very different company than we were even 5-10 years ago. In terms of revenue, most of our revenue still is linear. We have appointment television, whether it's live sports or entertainment. So linear is the driver, but I'll tell you, digital is maybe 10-15% of the revenue pie, and sports maybe 25%. But yeah, it's definitely changing, and we're trying to future-proof ourselves with all these different assets that we've launched.
Great, and I'm looking forward to talking about that interplay between digital and linear. I know that affects all of you, so it'll be interesting to go further into that.
Sure.
Jamie, what about you?
Well, I think it's, as I'm an engine shop, I would look at it from an industry perspective. And you look at video games and how they've grown over 50% in sort of global revenues in the last 5 years. I think, the video game companies have done an amazing job of transitioning into the digital age. And with the growth of video games, and especially with the rise of the internet, and we've now have viewership. And so we've now come to a place where gaming is, the number one passion point. Everybody is a gamer globally. And we have on-demand competition, and now we have on-demand spectatorship. So in terms of eSports, and I guess why I'm here is the connection to sports, eSports was a costly marketing line item, maybe in community management, to make these hardcore fans happy, that has now become new revenue streams, discrete business units, and now we're seeing they're franchising these leagues and emulating a lot of the traditional sports models.
Excellent, and I think everyone on this panel is looking at esports and figuring out ways to jump on that train.
I think we are too.
John, what about you at WWE?
It's cool I get to follow the guy with the cool accent and the hat and the face scruff, so that's good. Thank you for that positioning.
You're welcome.
Volk. Look, we've embraced the change in the way people consume content, and there's no magic bullet. There's no what's right for us is wrong for the NFL or vice versa. But what we found is people want to consume content, and if you have content that is in some ways compelling, whether it's in the U.S. or around the world, you have to figure out how you get the content to the consumers. And in many ways, we're content agnostic. We're just in a race for this one thing called time. So the more of your time and your time that I can get by delivering you the content in the way that you choose that you want to ingest it, I win. Linear's not going anywhere. Digital's not going anywhere. Everyone has 9 devices in their pockets, all of which are probably going off at some point during the next hour. But how do you win that race for time? And that's something that we spend a lot of time at. We launched an OTT product probably well before the rush of OTT products. And what we found is whether it's OTT or linear or whatever it may be, deliver the content if it's good enough, and you win.
And you said it's such an interesting intersection as well between sports and entertainment.
And between NFL guy and a guy with a cool hat. So.
Well, speaking of the NFL guy, tell us a little bit about how over the history of such a storied organization like the NFL, your overall revenue composition has changed.
Well, thank you, and that was quite a build-up, by the way. I've never been compared to Bill Russell before, so I'm not sure how, Jeff, I'm possibly going to be able to react to that, but thank you all for being here. It's an interesting role. I work at a 100-year-old company. And we think about revenue in a couple ways. We have national and local. Our clubs have revenue that they generate from specifically what they're able to do in their local markets, as well as some of their local media, specifically around ticket sales and sponsorships. And then at the national level, we do a couple of things. Media is a big part of our business, roughly 80%. The way that we ultimately monetize our fans and create all of the revenue that we use to invest in the sport is primarily around live linear television, as well as increasingly a whole host of digital endpoints. The basic strategy for the NFL and our media distribution strategy has not changed very much since we started broadcasting the first national game on NBC radio in 1929. We broadcast games nationally in as broadly a reach model as we possibly can. Historically, that was television and radio. Increasingly now, it's those two platforms as well. plus a really wide range of digital distribution endpoints. We continue to invest in both owned and operated assets like NFL Network. We have a 24/7 cable network as well as a broad range of digital endpoints. And we're using all of those things to build out what's now a pretty robust social media platform and presence as well.
So you're a 100-year-old organization, but you have to stay pretty agile, but it's still linear that's driving a big portion of that pie.
It starts with the live game. It's always about the game first, and then the way we think about this is there is the game, and then there's 24/7 fan engagement. Anything else that we can do to spur conversation for our fans, whether that is using second screen experiences like on Twitter, on Facebook, on Snapchat, and increasingly on Reddit and TikTok as well, to be able to talk about what fans are seeing, communicate their own fandom. These are all things that we're continuing to invest pretty heavily in and have had really good success. Ultimately, fans are using these things as ways to express their own fandom and their own interest. And these are becoming pretty big revenue drivers for all of our partners as well.
Great. And Dustin, you come all the way from Milwaukee. You flew in last night. Thank you for being here. Tell us a little bit about how things are organized at the Bucks.
Yeah, so I think, similar to everybody else, our core business is still the same as what it has always been. I think the way we look at ourselves is a lot different, though. We're only a 51-year-old company, and I would say for the first 47 years of that, we were a sports team. It was ticket sales, it was your local cable deal. That was our revenue stream. The last 4 or 5 years, we've really become an entertainment company. We're in the process of developing 31 acres in downtown Milwaukee, everything from bars and restaurants to real estate, to commercial real estate, to residential. Brand new arena that opened last year. We're opening a haunted house. Opening night is tonight. So missing the opening night
for the haunted house. Is that an invitation to all of us?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay,
now through November 3rd. It's just now how you stretch out and get to all these other places. So we see ourselves obviously at the core as the team that's on the court. But we're as much a content organization as we are trying to sell tickets. So our audience for our digital content is overwhelmingly international, and with more Facebook followers in the Philippines than we do in the United States. So how you look at that and still serve that core local business is really kind of what we're constantly striving to, and now looking into other things like eSports and our 2K League team and a new G League team and that sort of thing. So it's just really expanded and blossomed over the last 5 years.
Well, speaking of the expansion of content, I want to talk a little bit about the death of linear that appears to have been grossly exaggerated, which I learned speaking with all of these panelists before we started this. The rise of digital is often and incorrectly positioned as the death of linear. So it's created new businesses and products where they weren't before. Jamie, I'm looking at you, and it's so interesting to hear how you're kind of balancing those giant linear deals that still, correct me if I'm wrong, drive a lot of revenue for many of your organizations, but also have an interplay with digital so that there's a reason to be consuming on more than one platform. And actually, John, it's interesting to start with you because you just announced a linear deal for WWE.
So now I'm going to do my plug for our linear deal with our partners at Fox. But what we're trying to do with the linear deal, we've been on USA and had great success there. The number 1 and 2 rated programs on USA, and this is a cool stat, the number 1 and 2 longest running programs on cable television. So we're excited about that. But our new partnership with Fox, which launches on the 4th of October, which happens to be the 20th anniversary of SmackDown, will be a game changer for us. We'll be 2 hours every week, 52 weeks a year on Fox 5 here in New York. I don't know the number in Milwaukee, but we'll make sure you can watch it. But that's transformational for us. And if linear was dead, it wouldn't be transformational for us. And linear's not dead. Linear's not dying. Linear's just changed because the world has changed. The way I view and consume has changed. The way we've all consume changes, and the properties with the right mix of content that matters and strategy that works take advantage of those opportunities. So we're incredibly excited that all of you are going to be on the 4th of October tuning in at 8 o'clock on Fox. But after, if you want to consume a little short form.
Very smooth, nicely done.
That was smooth, right? After, if you want to consume a little short form, we want you to do that. If you want to play one of our video games, we want you to do that. All the stuff that we're all trying to do are complements to the core. And the core, whether it's football, whether it's basketball, whether it's WWE, the core is what drives it. And the content is what makes it all worth it. And how we deliver it is grossly exaggerated. We just have to be pretty nimble at doing it as the world around us changes. And sports imitates life is one of the things I say a lot. So has all of our lives changed recently with all of this technology? Heck yeah. How do you take advantage of it and package it so more people can consume your content if your content's good?
Now, Blake, when we were last speaking, you told me that Tom Brady has a TikTok. He was a slow adapter on Twitter, so it'd be interesting to hear a little bit about how the NFL is balancing these two mega content lines.
Yeah, sure, and I'll actually piggyback in part on what John just said, because we are a huge believer not just in linear, but again, starting with our live product. All of us here represent either organizations or broadcasters that are deeply invested in and focused on live. It starts with the game. We had 109 million people who watched NFL football in week 1 this year. Interestingly, north of 90 to, depending on how Nielsen looks at it, 90 to 97%, depending on what broadcaster you were watching, was watching that on some form of traditionally television or pay television product. That being said, and what's to me so exciting about it, and it gets to the TikTok point as well, is that we also now have a model where all of those games are available for our fans for free on their phone, the same way they would be able to watch it on television. That's available through a partnership that we have with Verizon. See, there's my plug. Great partners. And additionally, we're doing a lot of things on things like Thursday Night Football, where we have a great partnership both with Fox on the linear side on pay television, broadcast television and pay television through NFL Network, as well as with Amazon, and increasingly doing things that are fairly different on platforms like Twitch, where we have co-streamers coming on and actually doing their own form of commentary with the live broadcast. Similarly, platforms like TikTok are really interesting to us. This is a brand new partnership we just launched prior to the start of our season, and we're bringing on the league. We have now 28 of our 32 clubs, and it'll soon be all 32 that will be live with their own presence as well, all making vertical 15-second video, all short form, generally designed to be fun and entertaining our fans. And now increasingly we're onboarding our players. We have a pretty robust player social program. North of 440 of our players are currently working directly with the league to be able to get access to content, to be able to build their own brands and talk about football and themselves. Tom Brady's one of those players, and it's exciting to see him on TikTok.
Yeah, and I want to get back to that athlete point in a minute. Looks like you had something to say. Tell us a little bit what's going on at the Bucks.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say, I think, we've heard for years about, it was going to be the giant TVs that stop people from coming to games. And then suddenly everything was on a small screen and going through. And we, during the playoffs this year, we put a big, not great screen out on our plaza, and suddenly there's 15,000 people out in the middle of the snow or rain or that sort of thing. And it really, it's about, as John said, it's about having quality content and things that people want to engage with. And it's the social experience of actually, having something that's a part of the culture that you can talk to your friends about. And that's what, we all have that advantage of being that live and that entertainment that is something that people are actually clamoring for. And it's just all of these different tools. We just jumped onto TikTok as well, and it's really just playing with it at this point and trying to understand what that audience is. But now we have so many different ways to engage with different people. It's not just that traditional sports fan who is going to, male 25-54 is going to go buy that season ticket and come through. It just really makes us have to really be creative and think about how we differentiate what that content is. And
so interesting that so many of your international fans are actually outpacing your US-based fans on digital.
Yeah, for sure. And it really gives us challenges into how we have to think about when we're putting content out, how we're differentiating what that is, and now even looking into, are we going to staff up and have, really get into the Chinese market? Those are all the decisions we're making now, as opposed to 5 years ago when it was how do we sell tickets and how do we get people to watch on our regional cable network.
And Jamie, with eSports, it's interesting. So many people sit down and watch other people play video games. You were native to digital and then moved to linear with some big deals with ESPN, et cetera.
So we're like the opposite, and so let me say, like, we gamers, fans of eSports, I guess we were maybe partly responsible for the concept of death of linear. We over-index in a younger demographic that are cord cutters, that are going over onto this new platform called Twitch, and they're watching people play video games, either at a casual, competitive manner or at a professional level. And I think, to the NFL's point, Amazon that owns Twitch, they were putting NFL shows on Twitch, and at the same time, Overwatch League was getting the same viewing numbers, if not higher. So everything balanced itself out, but now eSports is like saying sports, right? But the major games inside of esports that make up the different sports are now getting online viewership numbers that is rivaling or, sort of beating linear television. We're getting stadium attendance, 170,000 people at Katowice. So coming together from all around the world to play and to spectate. And we have professional athletes, and we do consider them athletes, who our audience can connect to at any part of the world. And when they're not competing in streaming, have a two-way conversation with them. So to your point, yeah, we are absolutely digitally native. And I would say we look at media rights and the monies that your leagues are making. We're like, how do we get that? We have the challenges of we need to grow. So we actually need to leverage traditional sports audiences, linear television audiences. We need to get our data reporting and KPIs and analytics to a place, and average minute audience from Nielsen and Activision Blizzard, I think, is going to help get us there.
Well, John, as the broadcaster on this panel, I wanted you to be the last one to answer, so you had to sweat it out all the way through. Tell us a little bit about how you're using digital to interplay with your traditional offerings.
Yeah, well, I will tell you, linear TV is alive and well, and it's still a mass reach vehicle. That's why, you guys do the deals that you do. But you have to innovate. I mean, it's critical that you do that. And for us, it's about pushing our content everywhere. And with the Hispanic audience, quite frankly, they're early adapters to technology. They're younger. They're more mobile and social. So we want to be on those platforms. So we created a lot of partnerships with other companies like Twitter, Facebook. We do stuff with Instagram, Verizon Media Group for some syndicated content. So it's important that we push our content everywhere it needs to be. It's a great time to be a content provider now because there's so many distribution partners, our owned and operated, and other ones where we can push that content out. So it's great.
Now, Blake, you made a point earlier that I want to come back to, and it's about the rise of the athlete as a platform. Of course, they always were to some extent, but increasingly, they're competing for eyes and airtime too. So tell me a little bit about whether or not you ever see this as competitive to your objectives, and how are you trying to help them augment that if you see it as a driver?
I think for us, more the latter. I mean, we recognize, especially in a growing platform like social media, we think about these things as the league, our clubs, our 32 clubs, and our players. The league accounts on any given platform are going to be larger than any one club and almost always than any one player. But collectively, the club accounts are much larger than the league, and our players have by far the largest and broadest reach. What we want to do is work with them. We and each one of us, it'd be interesting to hear from everybody because we all are sort of in a different position. For us, increasingly, we're trying to work directly with our players ultimately to help them. What are the assets we can give them? What are the pieces of advice or things that we can share with them to help them grow their own brands? Because what we want them to do is harness the power of this audience for themselves and also to be able to tell fans, hey, come and watch me on Sunday. We're making the game available in more ways than ever before, and people are looking for different kinds of touch points. And being able to not only see their favorite players on Sunday, but also understand how do they train? What do they eat? What are the things that they do to stay ready? How do they prepare? What are their hobbies? It's really exciting, actually, to be able to work with players to share that side of themselves. And so we're doing a lot more of that. Again, we have a program that's been focused on both advising our players directly and bringing them onto these platforms, as well as an additional program to essentially invest in their own camera and media crews. So we now have a program called the Live Content Correspondence Group, which has now 64 people, it's 2 per each of our 32 NFL clubs, who are focused on not only capturing additional content on game days that complements and supplements what we do in broadcast, but also increasingly following our players on a variety of things they do, whether it's community outreach, in their local areas to all sorts of different events that they put on in competitions.
Now, Jamie, one day you have someone who's playing a video game at home, the next day they're selling out the Bird's Nest in Beijing. How are you dealing with the rise of esports personalities, and how are they driving value for you?
So I think, so how they're driving value for us, let's think about like where we're slightly different from sports is the video game publishers own these sports. They have allowed the rise of live streaming and these streamers to build brands around their game content. Let's take Ninja and let's call him an athlete. And he's been streaming, around a game like Fortnite, and without a doubt has contributed to the kind of mass awareness, the cultural phenomena that has been Fortnite. He's raised awareness amongst traditional sports fans of esports, and I think that there's a very complementary relationship there. You know, some of the top esport athletes do have the biggest following across Twitch and across YouTube and Twitter. And you know, for a lot of these teams, coming back to your point, content is absolutely king. And whilst we don't have the same media rights, you know, sponsorships and advertising and branded content is super critical to these teams so they can invest in growth properties. And so their athletes being these superstars is critical. So there's definitely a sort of symbiotic relationship there.
And Dustin, I feel like NBA players are some of the most active, especially on emerging forms of social media. How are you working with them?
Yeah, I mean, the NBA is such a personality-driven league, and it's, you know, people really feel like they know who these players are. The off-season has almost become as impactful to the brand and the league as the actual regular season does, the way people follow along free agency and trades and everything along those lines. So, you know, to us, it's all about working with the players, and it really went from a few years ago. It was really an education process in how we can help them really expand their brand and that sort of thing, to now it's just kind of a constant. You know, we've got our head of content who works very closely with our players individually, making sure that he's getting them the photos that he knows that they like, the types of content they want, and then working with each of them, you know, as you go into the season, kind of building the types of things that they're interested in. We just had players out in New York meeting with some people from J. Cole's production studio, because that's what they're interested in after their playing careers is music and how to get into that industry. And so how do we work with them and kind of develop things and open doors that maybe they don't know how to open, and then be able to kind of work together on the content from that side.
And John, the increasing focus on the athletes, their personalities, their day-to-day lives, how is it driving content-making decisions at Univision?
Well, we love when they're tweeting and on their social media platforms, because we're talking about soccer. And we're the home of soccer. We have like over 50% of all the viewing eyeballs in the country for soccer, regardless of language, are on Univision. So anytime they're doing any of that social media content, pushing that out and talking about it, it's growing the game of soccer. Like, I mean, what the U.S. women's soccer team did this summer on the field and off the field was amazing, and it's just good for the game of soccer. So we like it. But we're also working with, you know, brands and partners. I talked about the partnerships earlier, where we do like Liga MX, our Mexican League Soccer, that runs all year for us. But, you know, the technology and the social media, we're doing a live post-game show on Twitter, exclusive, 15 minutes in some of these big games. And that's the kind of stuff that we haven't done before. So we love when people are doing this.
And John, WWE is so personality-driven and always has been. How are you continuing to extract value from that?
For me, it starts with when I started at WWE, I kind of had my mind blown, because I, like my colleagues to the left, grew up in more of a stick and ball type of community where we loved working with the unions. Believe me, unions are great. But unions are challenging, and unions have their own way of doing things, and players are part of unions. This guy, Vince McMahon, that I work with, had a really good idea. Let's not have one. And it allowed us to all be part of one community. And the community is, whether you're Roman Reigns or Becky Lynch, two of our biggest superstars, or you're sitting on the first floor in Stamford, Connecticut, working on our social media campaign, we're all part of the WWE. And our superstars are athletes, and they are entertainers. And we sit at that unique pivot point. We kind of like to say the best of live sports, because Blake's spot on live sports. And we tell dramas like some of the best Game of Thrones segments, or some of the best dramas on television. But then when we can emphasize the fact that our superstars are part of our own ecosystem, that we can work with them, that we can work with our partners in them, and they're all trained to do this, it creates magic for us. You know, we're the #1 sports site on YouTube. Not the #1 sports site like we usually have to say, other than the NFL. We're the #1 in that space. And that's driven by, one, it takes a lot of effort, but it's driven by what all of our social media and our digital is driven by. It's driven by our superstars. Because at the end of the day, the content's got to be good, and your stars need to be stars. And we're fortunate that we have stars who understand what it means on the field or in the ring, and we understand what it means to be part of that ecosystem that we're all so close to, which is the digital and social world. So whether it's TikTok and YouTube and all of those different places, we've been fortunate to really be able to lean in early and lean in globally. Like our friends at the Bucks, 75% of our content is consumed outside of the United States. It puts me on a lot of airplanes, but it's a really huge opportunity for us and a reservoir of opportunity in places like India and China and Japan. And when you have this engine that is the WWE superstars doing all that they do, it's really a game changer.
Now, as a journalist, I feel like you really start to pick up on buzzwords as you're talking to people at a topic like revenue generation and sports. And the one that really popped up in every pre-call that I had with the panelists was personalization. So, Dustin, I'd like to start with you. Tell me a little bit about how the Bucks are personalizing their offerings, and what are some of the tools and technologies that are now at your disposal to be able to do that better than you could before? Because unanimously, you all said you can personalize like you never have been able to.
Yeah, I think for us, it's now controlling the entire fan experience from the minute they're showing up in our parking garages to coming through our plaza, eating dinner at our restaurants, coming into our building to see whether it's a Bucks game or coming to WWE or that sort of thing, and really being able to dig down into really getting a 360 view of what these consumers are, where they're going, moving around. I think the challenge we almost have now is, it's the conversation I have with our CTO all the time is, how much data is too much data at some level, and it's great to have being able to track across all these different platforms, but we need to be able to actually dig into what that means and actually identifying each of those little pieces and really almost taking a step back before we run forward on a lot of those things.
So this is a facetious question, but you said you control their experience from the parking garage. What are you guys doing in the parking garage with the Bucks?
I mean, it's we actually did a lot. I mean, when we built the new arena, we built a new structure right there. It's everything from the lighting control to the windows in the elevator, so people feel safe going up and down there. I mean, it's really every little detail we've kind of looked at.
You've managed everything. Blake, what about at the NFL?
On the media side and certainly at the local level, our clubs as well are building on some of the things Dustin touched on as well, increasingly using data and analytics to be able to personalize these experiences for our fans as they're coming into the buildings. On the media side, it's a couple things. One is, for all of our owned and operated assets, increasingly we're inviting our fans to register and tell us who their favorite teams are. We have millions of people playing on our fantasy football product, NFL.com Fantasy Football. We have a subscription product called Game Pass, which offers fans the ability to see basically every single camera angle, every play from the entirety of our season. It's it gives a level of personalization that's really unprecedented that we couldn't offer years ago to our fans. And so all of these different touch points for us, it starts with our fans and saying, how can we use the information we're gathering and the sort of community engagement around it to build new experiences that are going to be relevant for them. Social is the last one, and it isn't necessarily thought of as a personalization platform so much as usually about mass reach. But increasingly, we're actually leaning back in sort of in another evolution where in the past, a lot of our first presence on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Snapchat was about putting out highlights, putting out other kinds of complementary programming. Increasingly, what we're doing now is we're actually going back to that community and inviting them to talk to us. We launched a partnership with Reddit earlier this year, which is built entirely around bringing people from the NFL community, fans, players, coaches, on to ask them anything, sourcing questions directly from that community about what it is that matters to them about football, whether it's, we had, for example, Chicago Bears great Devin Hester the day before kickoff talking about what his career meant for him, what the experience was like playing for the Bears and being asked questions like, when did you really know that you had made it in the NFL? That type of thing where those questions were entirely voted on by the Reddit community, by people who are choosing what it is that they want to ask of their favorite players, is something we just couldn't do a few years ago, and it's really exciting to see how we can continue to build on that.
It's interesting, the thing that I keep thinking about as you increasingly personalize and interact with your audiences, you are generating so much data, and there must be some really interesting, albeit difficult, ways to extract information about where to go next from that. John, all the way at the end, tell me a little bit about how you're personalizing offerings at Univision.
Well, technology has really helped us do that, right? Our content is pushed to every screen possible. So you get that one-to-one interaction, personalization. Our over-the-top direct-to-consumer app is really, you get the content wherever you want, whenever you want. So that's really helped us with that. In terms of personalization, I think it's it's really about what we're doing socially in our digital assets. You can sign up for things. We have data, right, and we use that to inform all of our programming decisions. So our content really is, when we do our Twitter partnerships, when we do our Instagram partnerships, and then the app I talked about. That's the personalization that you get with our content that's pushed everywhere. So,
and before we get to Jamie, I just want to note that we're about 3 minutes away from opening up to questions, so please make sure that you get them in. Jamie, what about in the esports world?
So when it comes to personalization, on the Twitch channel, which is where the majority of this audience is, when we talk about watching these live events that we could equate as sporting events, there is the opportunity to already have this two-way conversation with chat, and that's obviously where we differ from linear. And I think, if you look at what Twitch did last year with Activision Blizzard and the Overwatch League season pass, and to your point, it is personalizing the camera views and the experience. Do I want to watch the official stream? Do I want to watch, my favorite player, Dogman? Do I want to watch his stream? Do I want it down the line? And so it is therefore the personalization of the viewing experience. I think in our industry, there's a big focus on, into like the kind of stuff like what Delta Trey would touch on is like, how do we now sort of, bring AR into the piece? How do we scrape data? And you're right, we can drown in just too much data, but how do we get data and turn it in real time and display it in our broadcast? Right, maybe that's not so personalized, but it's how do we start sort of, serving up, bite-sized information that makes this understandable and more entertaining? How do we be like the Olympics, and sort of some of these big sports leagues, before us? But I think, there's when these property owners like the game publishers work hand in hand with Twitch, with extensions and with these season passes, that's where they're able to, bring the personalization. And to the same with these organizations, the amount of data in real time that a game publisher has and that Twitch has about this audience. Like on the one hand, it's global and it's brilliant, but it's also fragmented. But at the same time, they know so much in any given moment about this audience that targeting and serving up personalized offerings, is all there and available. And that's definitely a big area that we're exploring.
And John, with such a global audience, how do you think about personalization?
I'm going to go back to my hypothesis that sports imitates life. When's the last time anyone ordered off a menu exactly what they put on the menu? We just don't do it culturally anymore. When's the last time you went into a store and bought a shirt without trying it on? Like, there's too much choice now. So just as sports imitates life in that way, we have to do the same thing with our offerings to all of our fans. And at WWE, we kind of have, and we look at a lot of different areas to invest, but we have three main areas that we've invested. One is in revenue generation and content in new ways, and we've talked about that. The second is in growth of international. I'm not that smart, but if 75% of our content is consumed outside of the United States and 30% of our revenue, I see an opportunity there. And the third is in data science, getting more data scientists so we can get to those nuggets of information and personalize and customize and give the fan, whether he's sitting in Mumbai or Milwaukee, the experience that he or her wants. And that's hard to do. It takes a lot of sifting in all those words he just said, but it takes a lot of time and it takes a lot of technology. And how we look at that is localizing a product in every part of the world and creating that interaction with the fans, because everywhere you go, it's great when the NBA goes to China or the NFL goes to London. What we look at as we travel around the world is we want our product to reflect the WWE universe in that country. So talk like they talk, something as simple as language, look like they look, eat the foods that they eat, be able to have that conversation. And you can't do that without understanding the data and localizing your property.
Perfect. So speaking of personalizing our offering, we actually have this amazing digital console over here that's starting to flash the questions for our panelists. So please get them in. We've got a couple of minutes that we can take a few. So we will kick it off with Dustin. What have you learned from the NFL about digital to consumer strategy? Actually, I'm thinking that this might be for...
Yeah, that might be the other.
Yeah. What have you learned from the NFL about digital to consumer strategy, and what don't you do that you should? Blake, what does the NBA do right? Or we have to reverse it.
The NBA does a lot right.
If you want to comment on each other's leagues, you can.
But no, I mean, I actually was fully prepared to answer that question as well, because one of the things that actually is quite interesting about all of the different leagues and teams is they're all very good at what they do. We also have very different businesses. We play once a week. Our players wear helmets. those are some things that are very different for us than, for example, what the NBA does. They're sort of built-in challenges and opportunities from that. So we think about that a lot in saying, when I was talking earlier about some of the ways that we're trying increasingly to invest in and help our players grow their own brands, it starts with the knowledge that those are two things that are a bit working against us. They're not as immediately well known. Our players' careers are often shorter. And again, they have helmets on that make them harder to recognize. So we're working with them increasingly to try to drive that awareness.
Yeah,
Am I answering the other question as well, or I'll take it
No,
out? Dustin?
I would say, what we look at from what the NFL does, really the NFL and WWE does as well as anybody in this space, but really the NFL is that storytelling, and the fact that you have everything builds up to Sunday and to that what that week's game and where you're going through and how you can really dig into. The NFL's been doing really content production right for so long that it's kind of that standard bearer that we all look at as we're trying to develop what the stories we're going to tell are, how we're building up and really kind of creating, instead of, we have 41 games a season, instead of 41 iterations of games, how do we make those episodes, throughout the season where you feel like you're seeing something and being a part of something different as you go through.
And you actually have another question down here about a star that you have, and he's worried about a non-American player being the face of the NBA. Is he on to anything with that statement? And these are great questions, by the way. The first one was allegedly submitted by Tom Brady. So, Tom, thank you for joining us.
Probably via TikTok.
Naturally.
I think the thing with Giannis, I think a lot more of that was people telling him that was the case, that, somebody with a long name. We still hear the jokes about, how do you pronounce Adetokounmpo? Like, look, he's been in the league 7 years. He's the MVP. People know how to pronounce his name now. And so I think it's as much him trying to get through those stereotypes and how much it even really matters. I think we've seen it. He was the cover of 2K last year. He's all over the place. He's got his own shoe that just launched. So I think he's done everything he needs to do to take care of that kind of stigma.
Yeah, and speaking of which, your Facebook composition is mostly international too,
Right.
so it almost doesn't even matter.
Doesn't even matter.
There's a question on the bottom that I'd like to direct to the whole panel, so I'm going to come down to you guys over there first. Why don't sports entities collaborate more often? I'm sure there are many overlaps. Is that ever capitalized on? John, why aren't you guys playing nice with each other?
Because we wrestle. That's what we do.
Play video games too. We collaborate with all the sports.
All the linear broadcasters certainly collaborate, so we should probably do that. But I think that's a misnomer. I think that we're all trying to do the same thing. We're all in the entertainment business, right? We're trying to create connections. We're trying to serve our fans, right? Whether it's a WWE universe or the few people that every once in a while on a Sunday tune into an NFL game, we all want to entertain the fans and give them the content that they deserve. So I agree with you 1,000%. I don't care what language he speaks or how many consonants in his last name. If he's good, people will want to watch him because he's an entertainer. And we're fortunate to all work in the industry, whether it's female soccer or it's WWE, whatever it is, we work in an industry where people want to consume our content. And that's all that matters. And we should work together because we're all doing the same thing.
You alluded to the broadcasters, so it'd be interesting to hear your perspective, John.
Yeah, John said it. The broadcasters do work with all the sports leagues. We have to collaborate. We have to grow the game together. We're all in it together. We pay a lot of money for that great product, and so we talk all the time. There could be some cross-pollination, but these guys will figure that out.
Charlotte Flair knocking our mascot out at a game was. I still have people talking to me about that from 2 years ago.
Dennis Rodman is on TikTok too. He was actually specifically talking about kickoff this year, so we're working on it.
We're collaborating as we speak.
There are things to keep improving on there.
I like this question from Patrick. It's at the bottom. How do you view legalized gambling as a potential revenue stream? Do you have any ways to leverage your assets in this way? Anyone who wants to take it?
I think there was a whole panel here before on that, right?
Yeah.
On gambling.
That's a good path.
Yeah.
Exactly.
It's huge for eSports.
If you weren't here, you missed the answer. I'm sorry.
Yeah, exactly. Listen, right now for us, Univision's perspective, it's still a local play, right? It's not legalized everywhere, right? But it will be. There'll be revenue streams there. It keeps people watching the games late, even ones that are blowouts, right? It helps the ratings. People do it. In England, it's big gambling in soccer. Mexico, the same thing. So it will be a revenue stream. We're not there yet for Univision perspective, but a lot of people are making a lot of money off it already.
It's
in
already
esports?
a huge revenue stream in esports and gaming, perhaps unofficially. I think we're going to see all of the betting companies come in with sponsorships of esports. And I know that some of the sort of people I respect in the industry that are very endemic, who are very focused on player data, which is a challenge, and the long-term vision of, predictive models for the sports betting. And I think on the premise that state by state, the sport book gets opened up, I know there's a lot of challenges to it, but I think it's going to be a very big revenue stream for esports.
NFL, NBA don't want to touch this? Or?
No, I'm happy to. Look, it's something that is, for us, a brave new world, but at the same time, something that is a really exciting opportunity in an area that we're spending a lot of time looking into. We're going to be, for our league, probably pretty deliberate and not necessarily the first mover in all of these areas because we really want to get it right. I mean, the integrity of the game is the most important thing for us. It's going to be critical that we make sure that in any step that we take, we focus first and foremost on the fact that the product that people are watching on the field is of high quality and without any question as to the outcome. And beyond that, on the commercial side, we're looking at a host of new things. We certainly agree that, as Jamie said, this is a way that people are going to continue to be engaged in watching the sport. We think that's great. Any reason for people to be tuning in, even in the fourth quarter of a blowout, we think is wonderful. Fantasy football, by way of example, going back 2 decades, has been a terrific driver of growth for us. And so you'll see us continuing to invest more in that area. We announced just earlier today that DraftKings is now an official partner of ours for the first time. Additionally, we have a casino sponsor with Caesars. Again, that's in the last 12 months. That's something new that you haven't seen from the NFL before. And we're working with Sportradar as our official data provider. And so the things that they can do, again, this is new for us and it'll continue to evolve. But you can imagine a host of opportunities for that kind of official data coming directly from a league, providing a host of new gaming opportunities and new ways for our fans to enjoy the sport.
Now, we have only about 1.5 minutes, so let's do a little bit of a lightning round. We have one question that says, what is one athlete across any sport who is doing it right? Success metrics are at your interpretation. Let's go straight down the line.
I think in the NBA, Kevin Durant, maybe a little bit polarizing on the things he's saying and doing, but he's out there. He's invested in his brand from a content standpoint. I think he's done a lot in terms of showcasing what a player can do.
Good one, Mike.
I'm going to cheat and not pick an NFL player, not because there are not many of them doing it well, but because it would seem too obvious. Lindsey Vonn is doing a terrific job. She knows exactly who her audience is. She does a great job of thinking about how to engage with them every day, creating endemic content for them, and frankly, being relevant year-round, even when her sport, especially when she was still active, is only at its peak during a small time of year, roughly every 4 years. In the Olympics. She really understands what she's doing and programs some really thoughtful content on a regular basis.
Good jobs to Lindsay. Now, John, WWE?
I'm not going to cheat. I'm going to go to WWE. And for a really important reason. One of our superstars, John Cena, is well known for what he's done in the ring and now what he's doing theatrically. But what he does not get enough credit for is he has granted more wishes than any other human on the planet. Not more than Yao Ming, not more than Tom Brady, more than any other human on the planet. And for all the stuff that we do and the data and the TikTok, at the end of the day, isn't that what it's about? How you can impact lives? And he is impacting some of those who need it the most. And for that, I applaud him.
Beautiful example. Jamie?
I mean, well, this is a bit of a challenging one. So I would say Rick Fox for starting Echo Fox esports team. And then on the athlete side, it's hard. Like, Faker in League of Legends is definitely a fantastic ambassador, the first pro to make more than $1 million. But then we've now got, the Ninjas and the Diffuse. And, I think from a success, of like fandom and revenue and viewership, they're definitely doing something right.
And last but not least, John.
Yeah, I'm going to cheat myself and go back to a little bit older player. We talked a lot about social media, but Derek Jeter never got in trouble, just held him like a real pro's pro, knew what he was doing, and started the Players Tribune. Now he's down with the Marlins. The guy is just he's excellent at everything he's done.
Well, gentlemen, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me today. Thank you for being here.
We did with Summer Rae.
So we're going to go to a second panel. So my one request is please don't come up to the stage. These guys are going to stick around. If they're leaving, they'll be up in the back. But we are going to make a quick transition. But one thing I did want to say about our amazing panelists, each represents what NYVC is about. Gillian is a we have a second panel, so please stay, sit. We're continuing. We have a full hour and a half. So each represents an element of a league, a broadcaster, a startup, an entrepreneur, etc. So I want to go to a quick video. It's advertising week from one of our advertisers.
Chef David.
Awesome event for the Monroe Carroll Jr. Children's Hospital at Vanderbilt.
Everybody that donated, thank you guys so much.
How about it, Las Vegas? Are you ready to rock?
All right, so if everyone could please take a seat, we're going to jump into our second panel. We have a lot of content stacked into a short window of time, so those of you on the right, if you're chatting, just please be respectful of the panel. We're gonna kick it off right away. And
sit. I'm sorry.
Exactly. So our first panel was really intended to be a representation of each of the three components, again, of NYVC: our entrepreneurs, our investors, and our executives and leagues. And each of those play a different role across the different ecosystem. This panel is exciting as can be. As you may know, the U.S. won the women's national FIFA women's national tournament this year, and pretty amazing. And the explosion of women's soccer has been tremendous. So I screwed up this slide, so if there's anyone you want to blame on it, blame me. This is not Bonnie, this is Deepan. Deepan's my co-founder at NYVC Sports. And Deepan, take it away with an amazing panel. I'll get out of the way, and we'll say a quick last few minutes at the very end. Again, hashtag NYVC Sports if you want to tweet, but this panel's amazing, and the sooner I get out of the way and let them talk, I think the better off we all are. So thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Jeff, and thank you all for everyone being here today.
have an amazing group of people up here. Just want to kind of set the stage a little. I think Jeff did a good job of talking about where the momentum's been, but I think John said on the earlier panel that sports kind of mimics our everyday society, and the rise of women's sports is no exception to that. And what I mean by that is, the impact that is felt on the pitch, on the field, in the rink, on the court, is certainly even larger off of each of those areas. And so the only way this conversation furthers, I'm sure for the next few months we'll hear a lot about women's soccer because of the World Cup and the women winning, but how do we keep that conversation going beyond that? How do we grow in the momentum? How do we keep having this conversation? Because that's the way that the impact is felt, not only in our developed countries, but more international markets and underdeveloped countries that are now for the first time able to watch their team play. And I think we owe it to the rest of the world to be able to see women on an equal playing field as we do men. And so I'm really excited to have everyone here today. I probably won't do justice by introducing everyone, so if you don't mind, maybe just take 30 seconds kind of introducing yourself and what you do and why you're here today.
Why are you looking at me?
Starting with you.
Oh my God. I'm not even there. Listen, well, thank you all for being here. And I want to thank my friend Assia Grazioli for inviting me. I'm not in the panel, but it was a last-minute surprise. My name is Eglantina Zing. I am from Venezuela, and I am a founder of an organization called Goleadoras. Girls with balls is our motto.
Hashtag.
Hey, girls with balls.
This is why I invited her.
Yeah, 4 o'clock in the afternoon, New York City, after the UN week, you have to have some energy and some girls with balls. Might as well, no? We use the magic of soccer. It's a very powerful tool. It's a universal language to empower little girls, to give them the opportunity to know that they have the self-confidence and to score many goals in and off the field. So my background is in media, and a couple of years ago, I had two options. Either I went and did a nail polish line, or I did something with a little bit more purpose. And being from a country that has so many challenges, social challenges, economical challenges, political challenges, to use a tool that brings people together and that forms and builds character and gives you pride and dignity, and to have a healthier life and a better world, I decided to start this organization. And from there on, the stories have been very successful, and with not even looking for it, we have some pretty amazing girls with balls soccer players. Dana Castellano is our very proud Venezuelan FIFA nominated. She's 17 years old, started in our program, changed her life. She's in Florida State University. Now she's going to play in the Barça and has been nominated by FIFA as the best soccer player. And, to have the opportunity to girls to be incorporated into, soccer in Latin America is more than just a sport. It's a religion. So, you're Argentinian, you know how it works. And the respect, the motivation, the identity, the way to achieve success, it's a platform that everybody wants, and in a way to bring women into it, it will make at least a more empathetic, collaborative outcome for all. So that's a little brief. And to get the media into engaging and to having that exposure, you have the exposure, you have more girls, you have more sponsors, and then you can keep growing. You get that wheel spinning, and then we're gonna have
Start them young.
Start them young. Yes. So.
Okay. Hello, my name is Victoire. I'm Greek Argentinian, but very Argentinian when it comes to soccer. I co-founded an agency representing male professional soccer players based in Miami about 5 years ago, next to my mother, who's a FIFA agent. We represented Latin American talent into the MLS and some other markets in Europe also. We became the first women to ever lead a sports agency, which was a massive honor for us to do. And I learned two things from there. One, think twice if you're gonna work with your mother. And no, I love her. She's awesome, but think twice. And the other thing I learned is that the soccer industry, I mean, I've been a massive fan my entire life. I'm a Racing fan. I grew up going to a stadium. My brother was a hooligan. I mean, it's just all over my DNA. But when I got into a business, I realized, you know, there was a lot of things to fix. It was a very low-tech industry, and things were done manually. And I decided to start a company that would fix some of those problems. Moved to San Francisco, to Silicon Valley, another thing that I doubt myself on, but and became one of the first soccer tech startups over there. And right now we're building GLORIA, which is essentially a visibility platform connecting male and female soccer players to federations and pro leagues around the world. We haven't launched yet. We launch at the end of the year in Argentina, in hand with the pro league over there, Superliga Argentina de Fútbol, and all the clubs in first division. So that's me. Assia, who's also, by the way, one of my investors. So I'm very happy to be here. Sorry, I had to say it.
Punchline. So I guess I have to start by saying I'm the luckiest person on the stage at the moment because Deepan and I have a really good relationship as co-investors and people in the investing community. And then I have actually, Eglantina underplayed her background, but I met her when we were early. Starting in our careers, and she was a MTV VJ for Latin America and one of the most recognizable faces in entertainment at the time, and what she's done, and how to see our friendship and everything go full circle and see her be, you know, creating the Girls with Balls. I think it's pretty awesome. And then yes, I'm an investor in the company in GLORIA, but I'm really an investor in Victoire, and it's just really nice to see sort of where this industry is going and more girls with balls. And one thing you have probably in common is they certainly, neither of them lack opinions. And I think that we need that, and we do need a little bit more of that to pave the way. But that said, my day job is a venture capitalist. I have a fund called Muse Capital that does early stage broad consumer investing. So we'll touch everything from fintech to healthcare. And as long as it touches the consumer at a certain point, obviously sports is a big part of that. I don't invest in all sports deals for our fund. We are a broad consumer, but we have touched some really interesting plays. We've done Betcha, which is an online, it's sort of Venmo for betting. And I hope one day I'll tell you, I told you so. He didn't get, or maybe he'll come into to the next round. But that's something I'm really excited about. I took an early bet into that. I invested in FaZe Clan, which is an eSports brand, which I'm very excited about what we've been doing in that space. Momentous, which is a protein drink that's actually backed by a lot of athletes, and I'm really proud of the quality of that, even though it is a saturated market, but it's really the best protein drink out there. Not a sort of an accidental plug there, but it is true. And then with regards to probably why I'm here is as a board of directors of Juventus Football Club. I've been on their board for the last 8 years. It's a public company in the Italian Stock Exchange, as many of you know. We just recently bought Cristiano Ronaldo, which has really helped us sort of become a much more global brand, certainly in the US, and has allowed us to expand into Asia. And one of the things I'm really proud of is that 2 years ago we started Juventus Women, which really is an investment into the future. So it's really something that we've made a purposeful effort to do, and I'm very proud of where we've been. We've won 2 Scudetti and one Coppa Italia, and I think that's pretty awesome for 2 years in a row. There are some discrepancies, but we'll get to that, I'm sure. And I think I have said everything.
Great.
Sort of.
Well, first of all, I probably shouldn't be here on stage. We have much better people from FIFA to be here representing and talking about this topic, but I am the guy in town, so you're stuck with me. Great. I typically introduce myself actually at these events as the devil incarnate. The reason for that is I've sold cigarettes, alcohol, gambling, finance.
I like you already.
The only common thematic in there has been sport. So this is year 19. I spent 18 of those years being very rude about sports rights holders. If you want to check out my LinkedIn, you'll see a lot of it saying how backward, how slow they are. So leading up to this, I spent 8 years running Europe's first sports investment vehicle. Had a lot of fun. That's how I met Deepan and a few others in this room. And then a gentleman I tried to do a couple of deals with said, come and join FIFA, which seemed completely mad. So I said, what the hell, let's go do that. I think,
I think we all have that in common.
I grew up on a beach in Brazil, so football's kind of, soccer's in my lifeblood. This was kind of a calling that you can't really say no to. I think I had a group of Americans, students come in, and I had to present to them, and I kind of hope I woke them up by saying that in the Men's World Cup, we ran 64 Super Bowls in 30 days, right? So that is the scope of football. The challenge is, how do we do that again, but for women the year after? And we're not there yet, but I think hopefully that's what we're here to talk about. But I think that's the scale of what soccer is, and the amount of potential there is from the use of technology and engaging with different and new audiences and embracing them. We can really increase that impact.
Man, I feel super boring. I'm from Baltimore, Maryland.
There's quite action in Baltimore.
Probably not the good action, but yeah. So, I think thank you very much. It's amazing to have you all up here. Assia, you mentioned obviously in terms of how every region, country, city is very different in the way in which they treat women's soccer, women's sports. You have the U.S., where it's a professional league, professional sports with its own, of course, challenges. But then you look at something like Syria, which we talked about, where the men's media rights alone are $1.3 billion a year in Italy, but the women's league is not necessarily a sanctioned league yet.
Yeah.
And so, two questions, and I'm going to open things up to really everyone here. But first thing is, how do you think about the responsibility for the more established parts of the world in terms of helping drive forward the sports for women in general across the rest of the world? And two, talk to us about some of the political challenges in the markets that you each work in that are probably more unique to women's sports.
Yeah, I mean, I'll start with the sort of Juventus-related analysis of Europe versus the U.S. and women's soccer. So as you mentioned, here it's a professional sport. The women's league it's a professional sport. In Italy, it's still considered a dilettante. It's not a professional league still. So there's a salary cap, and therefore the irony is, Juventus can attract the best players in the U.S. in Italy for the men's team, but it's the opposite for the women's team. So actually, the best talent is staying in the U.S. in the women's in women's soccer and not coming to Europe. And so somehow that needs to change, and I actually see it as an opportunity because MLS wants to gain greater credibility with the European teams and on a global level, and what they have is actually they have women's soccer, which is something that the European teams are going to want more of as they wake up to the opportunity, and more that is happening all across Europe. So I actually think from the stakeholders that there's a tool there, that women's soccer isn't just, of course, what we all know to be a great entertainment entity, and we'll get into that. But I actually think that it's a strategic tool with which the US and Europe men's can actually equalize. And so, I think but it does cause some challenges. It's going to take some time for European soccer to women's soccer to grow, because the salary caps have to change and it has to turn into a professional sport, and the brands have to come on board in a more regular way so that we can have some additional capital to be able to reinvest in these teams. But it really does start from building the brand to be able to attract the talent. So I think it really shouldn't be a US versus Europe, as it has been with the men's team. I actually think women's soccer should be seen as a global movement and something that we do together, so we don't have to have all these geographical barriers, and we can all take advantage of a unified platform. It really shouldn't be US versus Europe. It should be us being able to go on the GLORIA platform and look at players that are being traded internationally. It's a global sport. So ultimately, I think we're going to get there. And thanks to certainly technology that helps us get there, and the interest that young girls are getting. I think in Europe it is still politically There's some talk about changing the game, which I think needs to be squashed. But apart from that, I think we're good to go. I think we're ready to build.
Can I add to that?
Please, this is for everyone.
So I completely agree with everything Assia is saying. And actually, when I first started thinking about building GLORIA, I very quickly realized that there were no tech products in the marketplace that would cater to female players, which sounded completely crazy to me. But then it also came about as a massive opportunity to go to market first and use women's soccer to kind of show the rest of the world that technology can really, really solve lots of problems. And I think there's a very particular example that I've had, very recently while negotiating this deal with the Superliga in Argentina. And we were talking about soccer is highly political. So whoever is in this audience here doesn't know it is literally like working in the government. It's the same thing. Everyone has an agenda. You need to go find out what they want and then try to see how you can fit it in to get what you want. And it's unfortunate, but it's a reality. And when we were selling the GLORIA platform to the clubs in Argentina, Boca, River, these are one of the biggest clubs in the world and also the main exporter of talent in the world. And we were trying to tell them, hey, we're going to give you technology and you're going to be able to assess so many more players. And they were like, no, but we already see 50,000 players a year. And we were like, yeah, but in Argentina alone, there's 4 million players. You're clearly not seeing everyone, but they couldn't see past that. But then suddenly they all feel the pressure to build a women's team in their clubs. And they say, well, then we can use that because we have no structure to scout women. So then we are, okay, great. Well, if that's going to close the deal, let's do it. And now we need to prove that it's going to work, really. But there's a lot ahead of us. But I think that women, aside from being more inclusive, right? Because you have, the women that actually play on the pitch are from everywhere in the world. Their sexual orientation is from everywhere in the world. You don't see that in men's, right? There's a lot of great things about women, like, for example, a stat that I love using, which they spend 5 times less time on the floor than men when they get hit. So it's true. It's absolutely true. Yes, we should clap for that. Because what it does, it makes the game much more dynamic.
There's no show. Oh.
Yeah, none of those things. No Neymar, exactly.
Taking a rest and a drink in the meantime.
So essentially, my point is, there is a massive opportunity to take this wave, ride it, and show what we can build on it. So when Deepan invited us on this panel, we said, what are we going to talk about? And we said, let's stay away from the things that haven't been done right. Because there's plenty, and we could be here until tomorrow. Let's talk about the things that have been done right, and I think that this is one of those, right?
Yeah, it's the opportunity. We're all optimists in that sense. It doesn't mean that you're not aware of the issues, but it really is all about there is an opportunity in the difficulty that we find ourselves here and the challenges, and it's really up to us to create those.
Please.
Hey, I have no voice. Yesterday was the tournament of the United Nations, and our team has won, again, the goleadoras, the girls with balls. And it's a tournament the United Nations creates, like on a site, to use soccer as a way of moving forward the agenda of the 17 SDGs. I am an ambassador for the UN. I love the United Nations. But, to be able to take action into giving women the opportunity, and little girls, especially, I'm not really good with statistics, but they say 46% of our youth. That means 100% of tomorrow. If you don't invest in our youth, and it's a great opportunity, as you're saying, for business, for bettering lives, and for sports, for fun, and to have something that everybody can enjoy. Women are really good soccer players. We saw it in the U.S. team. They are badasses. They won there, and they showed everybody, in despite of all the obstacles and all the struggle they have to suffer just because of their gender. Come on, we're in 2019. We have apparently 35 genders to learn now, and we're still thinking about gender equality. It's like, move forward, people. So I come from the media and fashion, and if you get engaged all those people and try to tell people that it's all right for girls to play, you empower those little girls not to just score goals on the field, but off the field. And we're all going to have better business, much more money, much bigger and greater audiences for anything that you want to achieve. healthier people, healthier society. So it's a win-win situation. And soccer is just the biggest and most effective vehicle to take it through. So whoever is doubting that women in soccer are not good, they shouldn't play, it's not politically correct, they're tomboys. Sorry.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sorry to tell you. So, you know, we use the social part of and as I say, I'm very little tired and I was not supposed to be here, but I'm delighted to be here and join this conversation. I have a mouthful of feedback to tell you. There's little girls from Queens, and we started doing it in Haiti, Venezuela, Mexico, and you know, we all have like this idea of helping the most at-risk people. And here in the United States, we have a lot of people with a lot of grit that comes, like I am an immigrant. I came from Venezuela, I came to this country, and I learned how to, I grew up in the Amazon, so I have no tattoos, but a bunch of scars from my jaguar and a monkey and a bunch of other beasts around my life. I am the only daughter of 2 big brothers, very machistas. My dad always told me, you're not gonna be able to do this. Shut up, shut up, shut up, shut up. You're not gonna be able to do this. And hey, listen, he also gave me the challenge to stand up here and to be able to give others the opportunity to speak out, to have empathy, to be able to have the teamwork, to have the self-confidence to go out there. And that's what I love about Assia, and it's been my dearest friend, and I admire her so much because that girl has balls. And in life you have many obstacles, and sports is a thing that it shows you that you will win, you will lose, but you never lose because you always learn. So in every match, something can happen. And women and girls are just making a real difference and showing it in the bigger spectrum, not just on the field, but outside the field in every single way. So to invest in women and little girls to practice, to have the sport, is an investment for the healthier and for the best of all. So I think we always win in that situation.
Yeah, we agree with that in the sense that, you know, at Juve we built not just Juventus women, but also the youth academy.
Hey, Italy had a great performance at the FIFA, and FIFA, they're amazing. We're actually having a bigger women's league. We have more girls in our girls' league than FIFA. It's incredible. And David Beckham is like ginger because he calls me ginger. I'm not sure if I'm a ginger, but apparently I'm a carrot-headed ginger. And he was like, Ginger, you got more girls in your FIFA, in your goleadoras than FIFA. We have to talk about that. So I'm just building a platform for all of you to have many soccer players and many amazing women that are going to be mothers, that are going to be impacting and having healthier families and healthier world for all.
All right.
So follow goleadoras and be girls with balls.
I'm not sure how you follow that. But I mean, I think for me, you know, the Women's World Cup this year was a phenomenal success. I think everyone can agree.
Yeah.
I think I have some Italian colleagues who would come in after some of the matches and goes, we don't understand. Everyone back home is watching. I noticed, I think, I'll get the number wrong, but it was something like 3.9 million Brits watched the opening game of the Women's World Cup. It was France against South Korea. England were not involved, and yet it had one of the top ratings of the day, right? And I think, fantastic, we've got this wonderful pedestal that people can aspire to. The hard work starts now, right? Yeah. Which is, and I think, you know, some of the things that we did during the World Cup were great. We did better storytelling. We opened more channels so we get more of our content out to different parts of the world on social. They doubled the money that was going into the game for the Women's World Cup so that actually a lot of the clubs that are supplying the players would get repaid for that so they could afford to send them to the World Cup. Things that just haven't been done before. But I think what is probably not now heard about and will probably vanish and is not going to be reported on is the amount of work that is actually going in and the investment that's going into how do we get more girls into coaching? How do we coach more female coaches? More female administrators, and you know, our Secretary General, CEO, is a woman, Fatma, which I think makes a big difference. It tries to set out a stall for people. That's the stuff that kind of gets forgotten about because, yeah, we have this lovely glossy tournament that every 4 years comes along. What we don't want to hear is that in 4 years' time we're going, oh, and this is the beginning of it. It's like, come on, we had that in 2015 from my perspective, right? And I was an external then. To me, okay, 2019 really needs to be a launch pad. This is the outlier. America is the outlier, right? But even in the outlier, it's the national team, not the league, right? So to me, there is so much more work still to be done. And I think FIFA is looking at, and the president, I think, was this week reported looking at, what are the other tournaments we can provide? What are the other investments we can do that create more of an infrastructure for women's football around the world?
There's something I'd like to add to this Women's World Cup. I took my team there, so we were in Paris to watch Argentina, Japan. And Argentina, I don't know if you know, but it's not a professional game. I never played soccer because it was never well seen. They went through a lot of things, and actually most of the women that ended up going on the World Cup had 2 to 3 jobs, were cleaning ladies, cooks at schools, were fired from their jobs for going to the freaking World Cup. So you can imagine if that ever happened to Messi or any of the players on the men's national team. But to us, we went there, we were invited by AFA, by the Argentine Federation, and to me it was really important that my team saw, the struggle and saw, how much I had worked to get there and how we could help in the future, right? And we had the privilege to sit next to the families and hear some incredible stories of grit and determination, and really understand that women that play soccer are probably the most, the strongest human beings that you can come across. And one thing that struck me in a way that I can't even imagine, and really brings me to tears when I think about it, is that I had never gone to a Women's World Cup before. And this was my first time, and my first time, and I'm watching my team, right, that I'm very, very passionate about, and I'm screaming, and I'm looking around, and suddenly I realize that 80% of the audience are women and little girls. And to me, that's completely surreal, having grown up in a country where, you go to watch men play soccer with a 95% audience of men, and suddenly the same thing is happening with a much faster game, really flashy plays, by the way. Like, we have our own female Messi. We have all those things, and you have a completely different audience. So then you think, what's going to happen in the future? Because football, we all can agree that it's global, right? It's massive. Like, it is the biggest sport in the world. But we never think about the audience. We know it's a 3.4 billion people watch the World Cup last year, right? Or a number around there, but we never think about how that is divided between male and female. And I can tell you from having been to a bunch of matches on this World Cup that it was way more women there. And that is something for advertisers to have in mind, sponsors, and obviously FIFA.
I agree with you, and I think sort of to tie the two together, I think as thinking with my investor hat on, the problem with what has to happen is that a lot of investment has to be put into this industry across the board, and it's not a quick return on investment. Juventus, it's a cost sucker. I mean, we're putting money into it to develop it. We're investing into it. It doesn't work if we're the only ones doing it. Other teams have to do it as well. And the federations have to put money into it without expecting or asking anyone to find a return on investment. Of course, we all want brands to come on board, but brands have to invest and take a chunk out of their budget purposefully and announce that they're going to put X amount into women's soccer and spell out exactly where they're going to put it, so that then those brands can start actually showing up on those jerseys. And so there's influence on a whole level at every touch point of the entire ecosystem of people putting pressure to the media platforms to make sure that they're making time to have more visibility on platforms where you can watch a lot more men's football. And then ultimately, the real thing that has to happen is we can fill World Cup stadiums, but we have to be able to fill up the smaller stadiums and our own national stadiums. And so we have to make sure that we invest time with our teams to be able to build the profile of our players. So even with Juventus, there may not be as professional a league as here, but we've got extraordinary women on our team that have done great things. We have to invest as a team, put marketing money behind these women so that they can be lifted up as well. But it really is, we have to instead of just waiting for the money to come and things just to appear, we just have to all like with most things in innovation or disruption, you just have to make a point to invest into this space and not be waiting for 2-3 years on a return on investment. Expect that for the next 10 years, you're going to be throwing money at it. But when it works and when it all comes together, there's a ton of value. Women's soccer doesn't have all the TV rights lined up, sized up as they have been for men's soccer. So we are open to do deals left and right with whatever and whomever we want. You know, Juventus can't do that. We're in contracts with our wonderful partners. But we now the sky's the limit for women's soccer. So it just needs, as a real venture capitalist saying it, money. We need investment into this space. 10 years ago, when I got on the board of Juventus, Spotify, sports was not actually, Freudian slip, I was working with Spotify at the time. Sports was a risky asset. Nobody wanted to invest in it. Now it's the media darling. Let's make that true for women's soccer as well.
Let's do it.
So that was amazing. But one thing I want to talk about, Michael, hopefully I'm actually allowed to say this, but a couple weeks ago when we sat down, you talked about how FIFA was actually distributing 11 million soccer balls across. No, not supposed to say it, huh?
Yeah, I mean, it's not a project I'm involved in, so I don't want to go and get myself in trouble or say the wrong things. But yeah, no, it is. It's I think it's Kits for Schools program that the president announced, I think, last year. So 11 million footballs are being distributed to schools in needy parts of the world. I think they did a combination with the UN. World Food Organization, I think, in order to be able to get to some of the places to distribute to the schools. Alongside then, how do you teach the teachers in the schools to actually give coaching programs to people? I mean, I sit in the innovation investment piece, and some of the stuff I'm looking at is, in some of the more advanced parts of the world, how do we use technology to get to girls and women to give them the training tools that they have, particularly if they don't have the same training camps and school associations that the boys do. So how do we use that technology to democratize access to coaching?
Yep.
How do we achieve that?
I am part of that program, and I'm really grateful of FIFA to giving us, and Goleadores is part of a receiver of that program. And the thing is that you're using the 11 million soccer balls and taking it to the risk kids, and supporting organizations like ours that are actually being the grassroots that are actually making that happen, and take that ball on the journey of how is that conversion happening from that girl to kick a ball and to become a soccer player and to feed into new soccer field, clubs like Juventus, or to become professionals, but also to give them the opportunity. They need to work with governments. So the idea of using the United Nations and changing it into public policies, into giving the opportunities for girls to have, or by local governments in countries that, underdeveloped countries, to enforce the same participation of girls in sports. So that's like the basic part, and to be able to promote it with the media and to have the investment, it's this full circle collaboration. So FIFA is actually doing a great job. And I want to tell you that you should not just say you sell cigarettes and stuff. You are doing an amazing job. And I am very grateful and very happy for everything you guys are doing. But it takes the whole crowd to believe it, to support it, to respect it. And it comes from the families. Because soccer is a very familiar. You didn't play soccer because in Argentina it was like, boluda, who's going to play soccer? Girls don't play soccer. So it's a cultural kind of breakthrough.
By the way, I do want to say something about that. Sorry to interrupt you, but I think he's my oldest friend, so I can do it. I'm a hybrid because I'm 100% Italian, but I've been educated and had a lot of my career experiences here, and there really is a perfect cultural marriage between the U.S. and Europe. In Europe or in Latin America, we didn't grow up with girls being able to play soccer. It wasn't something that I was encouraged to do. I did it anyway because I was playing with my brother and his friends, but it wasn't something my father told me that I could do. So culturally, it's not there. But you have that here. And so you can really, and then yet in Europe, you have the reputation of football. If those two cultures marry, we can really get somewhere.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that's the idea of the conversation.
Yeah.
To bring it into breaking that cultural barrier, having the respect, having the support of all, from the media, from FIFA, and from all of us to, yeah, why not? And it's going to be amazing. It's fun. It's girls playing soccer is super sexy. It is.
All right. So we.
Deepen, what do you
Man,
think
that
about
was
that?
good. We have a couple questions here that we can dive into. Before we do that, I want to ask one thing, just from each person up here. A bit more of a rapid fire, but how do you think, from all the different federations, teams, brands, sports, unfortunately, is not one where people necessarily lead from the front. They generally follow suit from others if they see it's working. What's one property, team, league, media company, or something that you see out there that is actually being innovative that we may not have come across?
In sports?
In women's sports.
I would say La Liga Iberdrola in Spain. They're probably the best women's league right now. They're paying well. The stadiums are getting filled up, and they're investing a lot of money. Barcelona, Real Madrid, they're seeing that they can fill out stadiums, and they have the girls play in the same stadiums as men, which is something that in Argentina, for example, and sorry that I keep using this example, but I know the market very well, it doesn't happen because they're going to ruin the grass for the men. So why are we going to do that? They literally told me that, they told me that many times, and I would look at them and I'm like, are you actually telling me this right now?
Well, it's because it is expensive to maintain that grass, and that's the problem. Again, it's a return on investment.
So La Liga Iberdrola for me, and I urge you guys to look at it because it's incredible what they're doing over there.
So we are almost out of time entirely. Quickly.
I think, there's all the brands that have been doing. Nike has done great with empowering and supporting, especially, girls soccer. All their commercials have been very inspiring and has gotten to little girls to want to go play soccer. And
love it. Assia?
Mine's a quick one, Juventus. I'm proud of what we've done. When we created our stadium in Torino many years ago, the first thing we did was create children's sort of nanny services and around in the stadium so that husbands and wives can come to the game together and leave their children in daycare services that were equipped with professional nannies. And that also allowed us to grow a younger fan base of Juventus. It was great for that, but it was a win-win. It allowed us to have a lot more women, a lot more older generation. So that plus J Women, I think we're pretty darn innovative considering the constraints that we have in terms of the European League. I think we're doing well.
Awesome.
Well, I should say, I think from my perspective, all of our partners this year were very good. I think the one that impressed me the most actually was Visa. I thought they really doubled down on women's sport, not just with ourselves, but with a bunch of others and other football entities and so on, and went, you know what, we're believers in women's sport, and part of that is they believe, I'm sure, that this investment is going to pay back because who controls the household purse, right? Who's in charge of the money, right? So let's connect with that audience. Let's use sport as that way to do it. And I think it's fantastic. That's the kind of investment I want to see, not just people like us, but
what other brands
all
are
the
doing
others.
it?
I think there are more and more doing it. Just to me, one in particular that really stood out for me this year was Visa, because it was across a whole spectrum of events.
Which ones, sorry, I didn't say why, but which other brands have you seen that are picking? Visa's the top, I agree with you. They're doing the best. Is there anyone else that we should be on? Selfishly, I want to know.
Me too.
We'll talk after.
Okay.
All right, we are actually out of time. Thank you to our wonderful, wonderful panel. Thank you especially to Assia for pretty much putting this together.
Adding some color.
For us, and I know there were some late additions, so thank you very much. And Michael, thank you for coming into town for it. So with that, turn it over to Jeff and kind of wind it down.
So first of all, another round. This is how a panel is supposed to be done. Let me just give you a couple of summaries. One, Deepan asked 2 questions, and one of which was inappropriate and should have asked in the first place. It was sort of reprimanded for it. So Deepan lost control of the panel, which was amazing. Assia started asking questions. There was camaraderie. There was banter. Michael, you're not the guy in town. You're my guy. You're our guy. You're the guy from FIFA we would invite here. So this is how a panel is supposed to go. I don't know if many of you've been to this week, but another round of applause for whatever. This is how a panel is supposed to go. And on that note, thank you so much for being here. A lot of people coming out on the end of a day on a Friday and giving your time to network and to learn. And to
Oh my God.
Oh, it's a Friday? I was like, it's
Thursday.
Thursday.
It
You
feels
kidding me?
like
I was like,
Friday.
it's Friday.
Okay, I took a red eye home from LA and landed at 5 a.m. this morning. So welcome to Saturday.
That's how we made you feel like it was
I'm going to try
Friday.
to rebound from that one with some poise. Welcome to Thursday afternoon. Thanks for coming.